as of standing off, this situation has now rapidly deteriorated. The LAPD moving in on horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA. Shut the fuck up!
Okay.
Oh my goodness, was the protester just got shot?
Oh no. Oh my gosh.
With the rubber. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. To this barricade, you see some people running. We're a little bit blocked right now because we can't see what. Now you see a crowd racing to the east. Looks like maybe to the west. There he is now. Continuing to drive extremely erratically. I'm really worried that this person is going to drive so fast that he's going to run somebody over because there's just so many pedestrians running around, so many people with their phones out. This guy's already hit multiple things. You see the bumper damage, almost hitting that vehicle head on, and people are continuing to throw rocks at him. This is Alameda and Cesar Chavez. I think that guy was trying to go up to the driver's door. More people throw visual with drums there. You have this dumpster ablaze. You have another little cylinder there on the ground, also ablaze. And as these fires continue, LA, this one on Main and Alameda, and the other one near the intersection of First and Spring Street. So still tensions rising high as
LA riot, ICE riot, and protesters.
Guy with the flamethrower being taken into custody.
Please come in hitting the like button.
Someone like me, like a young white person that was born and raised in California, like it's our job to stand up with them and say that we don't stand for this either. And I'm not really scared of them. I'm more scared of what our country's becoming. We're sick of Trump. We're sick of everything. They're taking families away. We just want to be left alone. And
Hotplex.
I think America's really scary right now, and the only thing that kind of brings us hope is being here all together.
Hey, Joanne. Yeah, send a cash app.
I'm here with my friends, but I see a lot of
send a cash app, please.
Similar faces, very similar features to where we come from in Latin America. We're all indigenous, and it makes me tear up because I see all of them with so much love. They're fighting to keep their families together and to keep the community and the indigenous people together.
It's a revolution.
Yeah,
it's sad.
Here with love, and all the people standing over there with hate, and we're just here to fight that. That's what we're here for.
We're going to get our message more clear because I feel like people are starting to get the message kind of mixed up that we're here for violence, we're here to cause mayhem, but we're really here to get the message.
You chill.
That we aren't really okay with the fact that people are just going into homes, basically kidnapping people.
I am talking to Joanne. You chill. You hush. Joanne at home. You are a guest. Yeah, don't tell Joanne to hush. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Plex.
I love my people. I can't keep sitting by watching my brothers and sisters getting taken. We are no different from you.
We are Donald Trump's worst nightmare. We're here, we're showing him we're not rioters, we're not looters. We don't want the Gestapo in our neighborhood.
Okay, so does she. So don't mishandle, don't disrespect Joanne. Please don't disrespect Joanne. That's one of the guidelines coming in. Plex, you need to chill. Yeah, we out chill. Cool. I can dig that. Hi, Pepsi. Let's hope so. Let's hope so. let's hope so. I like that. I like that, Plex. Let's hope so. I think so. She came in speaking. So yes. They say it's gonna be a bad weekend.
Fire on a peaceful civilian.
Live on news, they're throwing shit at people that shouldn't be throwing shit on.
Oh,
Fuck that shit, they not talking about me.
A tight-knit college in a city of opportunity, Washburn offers the best of both worlds. Close, but not too close. Small classes.
We were just out there peacefully protesting. We were not being aggressive towards the cops at all. We were just protesting as normal, and they came, they barricaded us in, and eventually they arrested a couple people, and then they started throwing mace at us. They started spraying people with mace. Eventually they threw about 10 tear gas canisters, flooding that whole street with tear gas. They just became very aggressive. We were not being aggressive, and then they just got aggressive. Whenever they decided it was over, they just pushed us and used a lot of force, and assaulted us, arrested a couple people.
coming out. They're coming out. They're coming out. What's that?
Oh, wow.
Discover your new Acura right now at J. Wolf Acura.
Right, Mark, a pretty dramatic scene out here in Whittier. Want to help you get your bearings. We're on the 7300 block of Premium Avenue at the DoubleTree Hotel.
reports that are going across social media and throughout the neighborhood that ICE are getting into someone's hotel. Now, last weekend, which has been pretty large numbers in the area, and because of the unlawful assembly of people in their suspects and hotel property in a form of disturbance right here at Wrigley Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue across the about 50 to 75 people remaining here, and they are angry as you can imagine. It's a raucous scene out here in Whittier as we do not have confirmation that there are ICE agents at that hotel in the area. So a really sensitive time here.
Meet attorney Kelsey Stokes, a national leader in mass.
Anytime soon.
51 of the UN Charter, Iran will respond decisively and proportionately to these acts of aggression at a time, in a place, and by means of its choosing. This is not a threat. This is the natural, legal, and necessary consequence of an unprovoked military attack. Iran's response will be firm, lawful, and essential to restore deterrence, defend our sovereignty, and uphold the principles of international law. No aggressor can be allowed to act with impunity. Madam President, we have requested this emergency meeting because we expect this council to fulfill its
no free
mandate.
promo.
The Security Council must condemn in the strongest possible term Israeli unlawful aggression.
It reminds you of the
immediate,
60s.
concrete measures to hold the Israeli regime accountable and to prevent the further corrosion of international peace and security. Anything left would signal to collapse of the international system and invite chaos. Let me conclude with a simple and undeniable truth. Israel attacked Iran. Israel violated international law and the UN Charter, and Israel must be held accountable. The Security Council must act now and stop this act of aggression immediately. Silence is complicity in this crime. I thank you.
We'll take a 2-minute break, and we will take you right back in to more of the UN Security Council meeting.
But how long is this going to last?
Ron, on behalf of Israel.
Let's talk about some of what President Trump has said in light of
essentially be saying from these other countries, and they're also watching these attacks that are happening there in the Middle East.
U.S. obviously, there's been a bit of a mixed response. You had Secretary Rubio's comments last night that the U.S. had nothing to do with this. You had President Trump's public comments today on Truth Social, and then later in the day that were much more supportive of Israel. I think we're going to have to see where this goes and how far into this President Trump
all over the world.
For Russia and China, the situation is different. China's biggest issue is ensuring its continued flow of illicit oil from Iran. China is the biggest importer of Iranian oil by far, and even though it's sanctioned, the fact that it's sanctioned means China gets it at a discount. And so China really wants to ensure that nothing interferes with that. So far, Israel hasn't hit the oil facilities, for instance, which would ratchet up the situation even more. China certainly wants to see détente and an agreement for peace in the region, not necessarily because it cares significantly about peace, but for its own economic interests and its own growth. Russia's in a slightly different situation. Vladimir Putin is probably a bit mixed here. My sense is, yes, they will call for peace. They feel like they have to do that as an international player. It's ironic, given the situation in Ukraine right now. But I'm sure that there's also part of Putin that's actually quite happy about this. The Iranians and the Russians have engaged in an increasingly strategic relationship over the last year to 2 years, especially as we see the Iranians provide the Russians significant drone capabilities for use in Ukraine. I think in turn, the Russians will be thrilled, frankly, for the world to be distracted away from the Ukraine file again, back to the Middle East and back toward an actor in Israel that most have no issue piling onto and blaming for and refocusing attention. So I expect both to publicly call for peace, but the motivations here are going to be a little bit differently behind the scenes.
And again, Jonathan,
All part of the
we'll have
plan.
to step away here in just a second, but I have to ask you before you go. We know that there have been multiple conflicts happening in the Middle East, now with you simultaneously. The war in Gaza is still ongoing. How is this going to be impacted by these recent missile attacks back and forth between Israel and Iran?
Well, it's certainly going to set aside the negotiations for a hostage deal or for an end to the conflict in Gaza in the immediate future. Part of the long-term impact, or longer-term impact, I should say, is really going to be predicated on how long this conflict lasts. The Israelis are clear. This is going to go for quite a bit longer. This is going to be at least days, if not a week, maybe 2 weeks. This is at the beginning of this conflict with Iran. That pushes everything else to the side. And so it's going to probably be harder, frankly, to refocus. It's going to mean that it's going to be harder for a lot of the world, but also Israel, Qatar, Egypt, the U.S., those players who have a stake in Gaza to refocus on Gaza and come back to an agreement that can release the hostages and either end the crisis or at least suspend it again under a 60-day agreement, as was being discussed. It also gives Hamas, frankly, a bit of a break here. Israel's going to try and keep the pressure on, but it's going to need the reserves that it has in Israel caught up more. Israel can only fight on so many fronts at the same time for so long. Short amount of time, it can succeed. Longer term, or even medium term, a week, 2 weeks, it starts to really strain the Israeli military and what's capable. And so I think the impacts on Gaza are going to be fundamentally tied, really, to what the length of duration of the Iran-Israel crisis ends up being.
All right, it has certainly going to be something that we're continuing to follow as well. We certainly appreciate you for your time. Again, there with the Atlantic Council, Jonathan Panikoff, we appreciate you for joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we do appreciate him because some of these times when we're watching what we're seeing on our screen, it's important that we're adding context behind it as well. So these conflicts have been going on in the region for so many decades. I want to show you another live look that we have there in Tel Aviv. But it's important, again, that we're kind of watching and continuing to shape and help you get up to speed. In the meantime, I want to play this out from our partners there at Fox News. Alexandria Hoff, she has much more on the White House's response after President Trump met with his National Security Council earlier today, speaking on the relationship between the U.S. and Iran, as well as the U.S. and Israel.
And approaching, the White House captured this photo of the president in the West Wing today, though much of the afternoon was spent in the Situation Room with his National Security Council. On overnight strike action taken by Israel, the president tells Fox News the Iranians were hit 10 times worse than they thought they would be. They weren't ready to negotiate. I think they may be now. We'll see. President Trump eyeing up whether a weakened Iran will encourage progress in reaching a nuclear deal. A sixth round of talks were scheduled for Sunday in Oman. A senior U.S. official expressed hope to Fox News this morning that the meeting would still take place. That's despite Iranian state media reporting that the regime pulled out of Sunday's session. President Trump was aware of Israel's strikes beforehand, revealing yesterday only that he did not want military action to disrupt the nuclear talks.
As long as I think there is an agreement, I don't want them going in because I think I would blow it. Might help it, actually, but it also could blow it. They can't have a nuclear weapon. I'd prefer the more friendly path.
This morning, the president stated, 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have, perhaps, a second chance. The rest of the administration has remained largely quiet.
We just got word that Mr. Witkoff will not be able to join us.
Due to the fluid situation, Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, was forced to miss the opening of an exhibit in Washington that pays tribute to festival goers killed in Israel. Now, Energy Secretary Chris Wright did come out and state that his department is looking to any impacts that could potentially arise in terms of global energy supply from the situation that remains fluid. At the White House, Alexandria Hoff, Fox News.
Our thanks to Alexandria Hoff for that report. Again, if you're just now turning on your TV, we want to get you up to speed here. We've been in full coverage as these attacks have been ongoing in the Middle East. We know that it was in the early morning hours on Friday that the Israeli Defense Forces launched a sweeping strike on Iran. This was following months of attempted and seemingly failed nuclear negotiations. Israel carried out those strikes in Iran, adding that the explosions were heard all the way in the capital of Tehran as well. Israel has called this operation that it launched Operation Rising Lion. This was to target Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure. In response, though, this is really what we've been focusing on the last few hours. Iran launched a retaliatory large-scale ballistic missile attack on Israeli cities just a few hours later. And it was heard that the commander-in-chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard was killed during Israel's initial airstrikes on Iran. These strikes, though, again, came after Israel first threatened to go after Iran's nuclear facilities back in early November, after a series of back-and-forth missile attacks between April and October of last year. In the last few hours, we were also able to show you some of those missiles that were falling for the second time there in some of these Israeli cities. Putting this back up on your screen, we watched this live. The moment that some of these missiles were seen over the skyline there in Tel Aviv. The second round of attacks that Iran had launched against Israel. We've been speaking with some of our experts over the last few hours, going into detail about some of the defense forces that Israel has at its hand as well, its ability to protect itself from some of these attacks. So we'll continue to do so and continue to watch very closely here on Live Now from Fox. I want to take you back out live here. These are some of the moments that we're now seeing there as the skyline in Tel Aviv is relatively calm. The IDF had put out for a moment in time that folks there on the ground in Israel needed to shelter, but that has since been lifted. So we're keeping up here on Live Now from Fox, also hearing from the Air Force saying that dozens of missiles had been launched at the state of Israel from Iran, some of which were intercepted by the Air Force. Rescue forces are operating in several areas across the country where reports of falls have been received. So we'll continue to keep you updated here on Live Now as we're continuing to watch all of this as it unfolds. Want to also put this up on your screen. This is some of the moments of the aftermath that happened as well to that second round of attacks. Your discretion is advised, but this is some of the search and rescue efforts that were ongoing in Jerusalem at the time. Folks, as soon as they were able to step out to try to help those who've been impacted. So once we continue to get those updates in from the Middle East on some of the death tolls, if there have been any deaths reported or injuries, we'll do so as well. We're going to slide away now for a 2-minute commercial break. Stay right here with us on Live Now. On some of the death tolls as well as those injured in this conflict as well. So during that UN Security Council emergency meeting that took place a few hours ago in New York, we did hear that Israel says that 41 people were injured. And Israeli emergency services have been speaking out in the wake of some of these attacks. During that same UN Security Council meeting, we heard from the Iranian ambassador as well, saying that 78 people had been killed due to those Israeli attacks across Iran as well. So we'll continue to keep you updated as those numbers come in. But again, we do know that it was just about 3 hours ago that dozens of missiles were launched from Iran towards Israel. And they did say, the IDF, that some of those missiles were able to be intercepted. Search and rescue efforts are still ongoing in a number of locations, though, across the country. Wanted to give you that update here on Live Now from Fox. We're going to continue our coverage there, talking about the Middle East. Stay with us on Live Now. We're going to slide away for a 2-minute break.
Dozens are injured, 2 of them in a critical condition, and we are still following the news. Now take a moment and imagine if today that radical regime had nuclear warheads for those missiles. Last night, the State of Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a preemptive military operation carried out with precision, purpose, and the most advanced intelligence at our disposal. The mission was very clear: dismantle Iran's nuclear program, eliminate the architects of its terror and aggression, and neutralize the regime's ability to follow through on its repeated public promise to destroy the State of Israel. For years, Iran has declared its intent. Its leaders have spoken without hesitation. Less than a month ago, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei called a, quote, cancerous tumor that must be eradicated. IRGC commanders have vowed to, quote, open the gates of hell on Israel. This is a picture from the main square in Tehran. The streets of Tehran display a countdown clock. At the time of the photo, you can see it in Arabic, it was at 8,411 days. It is tracking the regime's planned timeline for Israel's destruction, paid by the government, putting it in the main squares in Tehran. These threats have been made on a near daily basis. Never again will we dismiss such threats or rationalize. But Israel has never had that luxury. We know our enemies. We know their ideology. And when a regime builds ballistic missiles, enriches uranium to near weapons grade, and openly declares its intent to destroy us, we believe them. We take them at their word. And we take action before it is too late. Colleagues, Israel did not act recklessly. We waited. We waited while Iran enriched uranium to 60%. A level with no civilian justification, and a level that brings the regime within days of a nuclear breakout. We waited while the IAEA reported that Iran had obstructed inspectors, destroyed monitoring equipment, and accelerated its covert special development program. We waited while Iran developed trigger mechanisms, detonation systems, and plans for warheads. We waited while its leadership actively recruited more nuclear scientists. We waited while Iran constructed a ballistic missile industry so large and sophisticated, and we can export it now, that it was intended to challenge even the US and Russia in ballistic missile capabilities. They cannot deny it. We waited for diplomacy to work. We gave the international community time. We watched negotiations stretched on as Iran made forced concessions or refused the most fundamental conditions. All the while, Iran continued to build toward the unthinkable. Last night, the wait ended. Our operation targeted 3 layers of the threat. First, we eliminated the central figures of Iran's military and nuclear command. This included Mohammad Hossein Bagheri, chief of the armed forces, Hossein Salami, commander of the IRGC terror organization, and Ghulam Ali Rashid, commander of emergency command. These men directed Iran's conventional military forces and terror forces. They coordinated the terror network that has plagued our region for decades. Think how many meetings you had here about the proxies of Iran in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza. Second, we struck Iran's military infrastructure, specifically the surface-to-surface missile array. Israeli Air Force fighter jets, guided by precise intelligence, completed a series of strikes against the Iranian regime's missile capabilities. Dozens of launchers, missile storage facilities, and additional military sites were destroyed. Late last year, Iran launched wave after wave of ballistic missiles at our cities. They deliberately targeted civilians. The destruction of these missile systems is a moral imperative. These are weapons with the capacity to reach thousands of kilometers. Leaving them in the hands of a radical regime, one that openly dreams of wiping our nation off the map, was not an option. We will not hesitate. We will not relent. And we will not allow a genocidal regime to endanger our people. Third, we struck the core of the nuclear program, the underground enrichment facilities at Natanz. This facility was operating at a military-grade capacity. Intelligence confirmed that within days, Iran could have produced enough material for multiple bombs. We targeted the heart of that effort. Madam President, this operation was carried out because the alternative was unthinkable. How long did the world expect us to wait? How long? Let's speak about it. Until they assembled the bomb? Until they mounted it on a Shahab missile? Until it was en route to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem? Like the more than 100 missiles that they sent an hour ago? How long should we wait? And if anyone in this chamber still believes Iran would never use such a weapon, I invite you to remember October 7. On that day, we saw what Iran's proxy Hamas was capable of. And then in Gaza, they did it with Kalashnikovs, with grenades. They butchered families, they burned children alive, they mutilated women. Imagine what the head of the snake would do with a nuclear warhead. To that end, we uncovered intelligence revealing a multi-front plan directed by Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas for a future assault on Israel. This one would be far more sophisticated than October 7. It envisioned mass missile launches, first from Iran, then from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, followed by coordinated infiltrations of our borders. The plan was not aspirational, it was operational, and it was nearing execution. This council has convened countless times in recent months. You have passed resolutions, called for restraint, demanded ceasefire. You met in emergency sessions when Hamas was under threat. But when Iran marched toward nuclear capability, you said nothing. When they crossed line after line, you drew none of your own. So we acted. We acted to ensure our people alive. We acted so that Jewish children in Jerusalem will not wake up to the sound of air raid sirens triggered by a nuclear launch. We acted so that Iranian missiles will not carry radioactive payloads into civilian neighborhoods. We acted because history has taught us that silence is complicity and hesitation is fatal. We acted because 80 years ago, the Jewish people made a promise to ourselves, never again. That promise applies to a nuclear holocaust as well. This was an act of national preservation. It was one we undertook alone, not because we wanted to, but because we were left no other option. We now turn to this council, not for permission, but for recognition. Recognition that Israel did what the world should have done. Recognition that the Iranian regime violated every obligation they ever undertook. Recognition that Israel had the undeniable right and duty to defend its people from extermination. We urge the Council to condemn Iran's nuclear violations. We urge the Council to finally acknowledge the existential threat Iran poses to the world. We urge the Council to join us in our commitment to prevent their genocidal dreams from becoming a reality. But we also expect something even more basic: moral clarity. Stop equating aggressors with defenders. Stop treating a genocidal regime and a democracy under siege as two sides of the same coin. The Iranian regime was preparing for war. This war would have stretched across the Middle East, to Europe, to Asia, to the Americas. It would have been against the international order. We acted to prevent a threat that would endanger not only Israel, but the entire world. We will not sit quietly while our people are targeted. Not again, not ever. Empty words will not stop Iran. Israel will. We did not wait for the bomb to fall, and we will never allow that day to come. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Israel for his statement, and I give the floor now to the representative of Iraq.
شكرا جزيلا السيدة رئيسة المجلس على استجابتك لعقد هذه الجلسة، وأشكر السيدة وكيل الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة والسيد مدير عام الوكالة الدولية للطاقة الذرية على الإيجاز اللذين تقدم به.
Their briefings. Madam President, Iraq expresses its deep concern and condemnation of the dangerous military aggression committed by the Israeli entity against the territories of the Islamic Republic of Iran, including their blatant violation of Iraq's sovereignty and the inviolability of its airspace. This constitutes a flagrant breach of the provisions of international law and the UN Charter. In this regard, the Republic of Iraq has submitted a formal letter of complaint to Your Excellency, President of the Security Council. We clarified the details of the said violations, which is not only an infringement on the inviolability and sovereignty of Iraq, but is also an illegitimate use and transgression on the airspace of another sovereign state to initiate acts of aggression against another UN member state. This exposes the entire region to huge security risks. This unacceptable and illegal aerial breach jeopardizes Iraq's security and stability. It's also a dangerous violation of our territorial integrity and our airspace. It pushes us into conflicts that we are not party to and are far from. It threatens regional and international peace and security. Iraq categorically rejects any attempt at turning our territories or airspace into a theater to settle regional or international accounts. We stress that we will not permit our national security or sovereignty to be at risk. We will not allow such violations to be repeated under any pretexts. Madam President, the government of the Republic of Iraq underlines that this aggression is also a violation of relevant Security Council resolutions and a violation of the sovereignty of a UN member state. This necessitates a clear position from the international community to ensure serious accountability. The Israeli entity is fully responsible for this escalation and for the repercussions of this violation of the security of Iraq and that of the entire region. Accordingly, the government of Iraq calls on the Council to, first, condemn this flagrant violation of Iraqi sovereignty and considering it a clear breach of the principles of the UN Charter and the rules of international law. Second, hold the Israeli entity fully responsible legally and politically for these acts of aggression. Third, take the necessary measures to stop these violations and prevent their repetition as they put Iraq's security and stability at risk. Madam President, this aggression highlights once again the need for the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility and maintain international peace and security. It must take a clear position vis-à-vis such repeated violations by the Israeli entity, whether against the Palestinian people or against a neighboring country in the region, all with impunity in a way that threatens the credibility of the international law at large. It will only exacerbate tension and instability in the region, which might lead to grave consequences. In conclusion, Madam President, the Republic of Iraq reiterates that it is fully committed to the principles of good neighborliness, non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries, and respect of international law. We reserve our right to take any necessary measures to protect our national security and sovereignty in line with the Charter and the rules of international law. Iraq calls on this august council to guarantee respect of state sovereignty and independence pursuant to the principles and purposes of the United Nations. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Iraq for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful, thank you, Madam President. Distinguished members of the Council, at the outset, allow me to thank Madam De Carlo and Mr. Grossi for their two valuable briefings. We address you today on behalf of the member states of the Gulf Cooperation Council, namely the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, the Sultanate of Oman, and my country, the State of Kuwait. The GCC condemns the attacks by Israel since early this morning against the Islamic Republic of Iran and its attacks against Iranian territory. We express our concern towards this serious escalation that warns of serious and dire consequences for the regional security and stability. These acts of aggression that come at a delicate moment when the Middle East is witnessing increased level of tensions are a blatant violation against the sovereignty of a UN member state, and they represent a serious precedent that undermines the basis upon which the international law is built, and in particular the principle of the respect for state sovereignty and the non-use or threat of use of force against any state. Madam President, the timing of this attack is very sensitive when international efforts were intensifying to resume nuclear negotiations between Iran and the United States. This attack will likely derail the diplomatic efforts and risks a wider conflict that will seriously affect regional and international security. In this context, the GCC affirms that such attacks, regardless of the justification, will only lead to deeper polarization and an expanded conflict, and they pave the way for a regional trajectory that is dangerous and that will not serve the interests of any population in the region. We also emphasize that security in the region region cannot be achieved through escalation and bombardment, but through dialogue and political and diplomatic means, and through promotion of good neighborliness and mutual respect. The GCC group will continue the efforts aimed at de-escalation and to advance dialogue and diplomacy. We reiterate our commitment to working with the concerned parties for the sake of peaceful and lasting resolutions that guarantee peace and security in the region. We also call in this context for the greatest degree of restraint and wisdom and to avoid an expanded conflict. The international community, and in particular the UN Security Council, must uphold their responsibility in ending these violations. In conclusion, the GCC reiterates its firm commitment to support peace and security and stability in the region, and we categorically reject the violation of any state sovereignty under any pretext, and we warn against an expanded conflict that will only serve the forces of chaos and extremism. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Kuwait for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. I now invite council members to informal consultations to continue our discussion on the subject.
The UN Security Council holding that emergency meeting earlier today in New York City. We continue to look at the live images out of Tel Aviv. Here's where things stand. Israel's ongoing attacks on Iranian nuclear sites, generals and scientists, have killed 78 people and wounded more than 320 on Friday. That's according to Iran's ambassador to the UN Security Council. He said the overwhelming majority of victims were civilians. Again, that's according to Iran. The Iranian ambassador spoke shortly after Iran retaliated with a barrage of long-range missiles targeting Israel's commercial capital, Tel Aviv. That wounded at least 34 people. Israel launched the attacks on Iran amid simmering tensions over Tehran's rapidly advancing nuclear program. It's a nuclear program that we're going to be discussing a lot in the coming hours. For years, Israel has threatened to do such a strike, and successive American administrations, they've also sought to prevent it, fearing that it would ignite a wider conflict across the Middle East and possibly be ineffective at destroying Iran's dispersed and hardened nuclear program. We've watched as Iranian projectiles have been intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome. We've been showing you those images on the screen while we were listening into the UN. This is not live. Took place earlier today, and these are going to be the types of images that we're watching out for tonight. We don't know where this story is headed from here. That's why we're going to stay on top of this for the majority of the evening. These are the missiles. They made their way from Iran over the airspace of several other countries, and then eventually these specific rockets targeting Tel Aviv. You'll see some of them being intercepted by the Iron Dome. It happens sporadically. We have audio on this. Let's listen in. I don't think we do. But you saw there, that was one of the instances where one of the missiles did appear to make contact with the ground. Iran and Israel continue to exchange missile attacks. Again, we don't know where this story is headed from here. Let's go to our live vantage point. Now we're live. It is dark over Tel Aviv. It is time for us to take a brief break. We are keeping close tabs on Fox News, specifically the movings of Trey Yingst. He's Fox's chief foreign correspondent. He lives in Tel Aviv. He's covered the Israel-Hamas war since October 7th of 2023. He says that an Iranian ballistic missile struck a residential building in the suburbs of Tel Aviv. At least one woman has been killed, he says, and 20 others injured, according to Israeli police. So at least one person being killed, along with 20 other injuries, according to Fox News and Trey Yingst. Our question for the evening for the audience: What do you want to know about the Israel-Iran conflict? We're going to do lots of interviews tonight. We asked a whole lot of questions yesterday. We want your questions. What do you want to know about the developing situation between Israel and Iran? You can scan that QR code or simply go to livenowfox.com/connect. You can submit your questions that way. Our newsroom you'll send those directly to our newsroom, and then you very well may see your question on air, posed to one of our analysts later on in the evening. By the way, when you open up that link, the specific tab that you're going to want to click on, there's three choices. Ask Now. Ask Now tab is going to want to be what you click on to submit your question about the Israel-Iran conflict. Let's slide away for a brief break. Our coverage from the Middle East continuing in a moment. Welcome back. This is the story we're going to be covering for the rest of the day. A live look at Tel Aviv. One story we were following earlier today is the White House. President Trump meeting with his National Security Council today. He says Iran may still have an opportunity to get a deal. Fox News correspondent Alexandria Hoff has more from the White House.
With a complex weekend approaching, the White House captured this photo of the president in the West Wing today, though much of the afternoon was spent in the Situation Room with his National Security Council. On overnight strike action taken by Israel, the president tells Fox News the Iranians were hit 10 times worse than they thought they would be. They weren't ready to negotiate. I think they may be now. We'll see. President Trump eyeing up whether a weakened Iran will encourage progress in reaching a nuclear deal. A sixth round of talks were scheduled for Sunday in Oman. A senior U.S. official expressed hope to Fox News this morning that the meeting would still take place. That's despite Iranian state media reporting that the regime pulled out of Sunday's session. President Trump was aware of Israel's strikes beforehand, revealing yesterday only that he did not want military action to disrupt the nuclear talks.
As long as I think there is an agreement, I don't want them going in because I think I would blow it. Might help it, actually, but it also could blow it. They can't have a nuclear weapon. I'd prefer the more friendly path.
This morning, the president stated, 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have, perhaps, a second chance. The rest of the administration has remained largely quiet.
We just got word that Mr. Wickoff will not be able to join us.
Due to the fluid situation, Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, was forced to miss the opening of an exhibit in Washington that pays tribute to festival goers killed in Israel. Now, Energy Secretary Chris Wright did come out and state that his department is looking to any impacts that could potentially arise in terms of global energy supply from the situation that remains fluid. At the White House, Alexander Rehoff, Fox News.
All right. Much of what we're going to be doing tonight is playing back what we've been learning from Fox News. We're going to be playing back the UN. We are going to be playing back some of what we've heard from Israeli officials and Iranian officials on this matter. Also going to be a huge part of our coverage is speaking with our experts and analysts. We've been relying on them so closely to keep us up to date and make sense of this very complex developing story out of the Middle East. We do have Sina Zodi standing by. He's with George Washington University. Thanks for coming on. This has been an incredibly busy past 24 hours. We've been watching the Middle East nonstop ever since we heard that Israel had carried out the attacks. My question for you today is, what questions do you have moving forward as we continue to watch things play out between Israel and Iran?
Well, I think the biggest question is how will the Israelis respond to Iran's retaliation to their strikes? And the second question, and I don't know the answer to that, and the second question is, how will the United States, as the major ally of Israel, how will Washington react? Will the Donald Trump administration try to restrain the Israelis? We already know that the U.S. is supporting Israel in its defensive operations against the Iranian missiles. But what is the path forward? And how will the United States act in the aftermath of these attacks?
So one other thing that I've been keeping an eye on is the United States' involvement in this. You mentioned that they have a defensive role in this so far. What could be the catalyst to get the United States more involved?
Well, I hope that the U.S. doesn't get involved, because this goes against what President Trump campaigned on. His base of support does not support the U.S. involvement in the region. But what would get the U.S. involved? I would say a retaliation by Iranians against American interests in the region. For example, if Iran decides that it would attack U.S. bases in the region and there are casualties, then I think any president, Republican or Democrat, would be compelled to respond one way or another. Now, it could be a limited response, it could be a more escalated response depending on the president, but I think any president would need to respond to it. I don't know how Iranians will behave. I don't believe that, I could be wrong, but I don't believe that they would try to attack the United States, because they know of the consequences if they do.
Let's talk about where this goes from here. There's a lot of unknowns right now. We're keeping a live look on these images out of cities like Tel Aviv, because we have, as you've likely seen along with us, we've seen images like this that show this is not live. Let me make that clear. This is not live. This is from the second barrage of missiles that Iran sent toward Israel, some of them being intercepted by the Iron Dome. But unfortunately, and I believe it'll play out here in a moment, every once in a while we do see one connect with the ground. I believe this projectile that we're watching right now is the one that eventually makes contact with the ground. I think the camera, it might have just missed it, but the real question that I'm trying to get here is, can more be done to harden up the Iron Dome? Is it possible for any missile defense system to truly stop everything?
Well, first of all, let me say that growing up in Iran during the Iran-Iraq War, I know firsthand the horrors that people go through when attacks like this happen. Whether it is for Iranian civilians or the Israeli civilians, it is unimaginable. But no system is perfect. And this is what Iranians have been relying on, to overwhelm the systems. If you launch 200 missiles, 100 missiles, as Iranians have been doing, the air defense system can shoot down 95 of them. But eventually some of them will pass and they will reach their target. In April, when Iran responded to Israel's attacks on its embassy, we know that 1 or 2 of Iranian missiles passed through the air defense system. Second time, when Iran struck Israel in October, it was, we know based on satellite imagery that roughly 30 still many of them passed the air defenses.
So one other thing that I've wanted to ask our guests as we've been watching this play out is that President Trump came into office promising to stop wars around the world. Are we moving closer to a new war despite the efforts of the administration? They have extended an olive branch, if you will, to the Iranians. There has been 5 meetings between U.S. officials and Iranian officials to try and de-escalate Iran's nuclear program. But does it feel like Israel and Iran are heading to something bigger than what they're already doing?
Well, I think when you look at the statements made by Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, in the past 2 decades, he has been trying to get the U.S. to attack Iran on behalf of Israel. We also had former Prime Minister Ehud Barak saying on CNN today that basically Benjamin Netanyahu wants the United States to do its bidding and attack Iran on behalf of Israel. And this is something that Donald Trump, the President Trump, doesn't want to do. He rightly has recognized that the U.S. cannot fight perpetual wars in the Middle East, and he wants to pull out and reduce the U.S. footprint in the region to focus on what really matters, that is China and Russia. But I don't think that the Israelis would mind dragging the United States and really chain the United States back to the region. And this is something that I believe the president should keep in mind. And when we also look at his base of support and MAGA Republicans, they are, interestingly, very much against the U.S. fighting Iran on behalf of Israel.
Let's talk about some of what President Trump has said in light of the developing situation. I don't believe we've seen him speak on camera yet. He has posted on Truth Social, though, saying that he basically gave Iran 60 days to come to some sort of agreement to ramp down their nuclear program, and this was the 61st day. So that's why we're seeing what we're seeing now. Is this a form of negotiating in public? Is the ultimate goal here very possibly that they're trying to pressure Iran into de-ramping their nuclear program? Not the diplomatic way now, but now we're having to see them use some military force. Is this a coaxing strategy at the end of the day?
It could be. It could be that the president is trying to ramp up the pressure on Iranians. But I think the fundamental issue is not really Iran curtailing its nuclear program. And when you pay attention to the statements coming from Iranians, they have no problem with significantly curtailing the program as they did in the past. The fundamental disagreement that Iran has with the United States is over the legal interpretation of the NPT. The Article 4 of NPT says that countries have an inalienable right to peaceful use of nuclear energy. Now, the Iranian interpretation is that this inalienable right also includes uranium enrichment. And this is a legal interpretation that the United States rejects, and it says that there is no such thing as the right to enrichment. Now, regardless of that, Iranians insist that they want to have some level of domestic enrichment in Iran. For them, it's a matter of national pride. We have to keep in mind that Iran is a very proud nation. They don't want to be seen as being humiliated by the U.S. And this is something that President Trump has so far refused. I think that if President Trump accepts some level of enrichment, Iranians will have no problem with significantly curtailing the nuclear program, which eliminates the possibility of getting the bomb, which is President Trump's stated objective.
So, we asked the audience to send in their questions. Sophia from Boise asks, what's the likelihood that the conflict could draw in other countries and become a wider regional war? I'm curious, what other Middle Eastern countries, perhaps maybe not even Middle Eastern countries, what countries might side with Iran if some sort of wider conflict were to break out?
Not many, in my opinion. I think that we should expect some condemnation coming from Russia or China, but whether they would actually side with Iran and provide Iran with military equipment, I'm skeptical. For example, Iranians have been asking the Russians to provide them with advanced Sukhoi 35 fighter planes, and that has not happened yet for a variety of reasons. Iranians have been asking the Russians to provide them with S-400 air defense systems, which the Russians, for a variety of reasons, have not provided them with. So I don't believe that there are many countries that would side with Iran, except in form of issuing statements. We also have to, interestingly, the Saudis have condemned Israel's initial attack. We've seen Qataris condemning it. We've also seen Omanis condemning the attack, and so have the Russians and the Chinese. But I don't think that many countries would come to Iran's assistance, as has historically been the case.
Let's ask a little bit more about Iran's nuclear program. What is our understanding? Last night, I was on the desk, and there was still a whole lot of maybes, possiblies going on. Do we know a little bit more now at this hour about what exactly was targeted, what exactly was eliminated yesterday and since then?
Well, nothing has been eliminated. There have been many attacks on different nuclear facilities. We know that Natanz facility in the province of Isfahan in central Iran has been attacked twice. So far, we have not heard anything from the Fordo enrichment facility, which is kind of a backup plan for Natanz enrichment facility. That has not been attacked yet. As we speak, we've heard that Isfahan, a nuclear facility in Isfahan has been attacked. I don't have any reporting on that. I don't know if it has been eliminated. But one thing that we have to keep in mind with the Iranian nuclear program is that Iranians learned from the experience of Israel's attack on Iraq and Syrian nuclear reactors in 1981, and I think the other one was in 2005 or 2006. And they have dispersed their nuclear facilities. They are deep underground, and they are well protected. And there are many redundancies. For example, a Fordo facility in the province of Qom is supposed to be a backup plan, a backup facility for Natanz, and they just announced yesterday that there will be a third, they're inaugurating a third enrichment facility. So again, they've been struck by the Israelis, but nothing has been eliminated. And there was just a New York Times report an hour ago, which clearly stated that Iranian nuclear program is still there.
These are the images of the strikes. Apologize for the audio interruption there. This is not live, by the way. This is just what we saw yesterday, these are the images in Iran. We see some of these areas that took some of the damage, buildings on fire, all of this coming into us last night after the initial round of Israeli strikes. Let's move to some of the economic angles to this. We, again, asked our audience to send in their questions. We want to know what matters to the people that watch us. Andrew from Michigan asking, what happens to global oil prices and our own gas prices if this turns into a wider war? Do we have any clarity on something like that?
Well, I will say this first, that I'm not an energy expert, but from my general understanding is that just following the news on the global oil market is that the price of oil has gone up. And the reason is, it's not that there will be a shortage of oil. The problem is with stability of the market and the ability to predict the future. Investors don't like wars, they don't like unforeseen events, and they don't like to see instability. And that's why the price has gone up. When the price of oil goes up, I think it will affect our economy here in the United States. And I think there's another reason that why I think President Trump should intervene more strongly to restrain the situation.
We've got one more question, I believe, that was sent in from a viewer. Let's take a look at this. And we do appreciate people sending this in. By the way, for anybody who does want to keep sending questions, and we're going to be doing this all night, you can scan the QR code on your screen or go to livenowfox.com/connect. You can submit your questions. You very well may see them on our air later, being presented to our experts. Jenny in St. Charles asks, what was the purpose of the emergency UN Security Council meeting that happened earlier today? What does either side expect or request from the UN?
Well, that's a very good question. The meeting was held at the request of Iran that complained to sent a letter to the official letter to the Security Council. Iranians requested the Security Council to condemn Israel's aggression and attack on Iranian territory, attack on its military brass and civilian infrastructure. This is what the Iranians were demanding. The Israelis got an opportunity to speak. The Israeli ambassador had an opportunity to speak. The Iranian ambassador spoke. But my understanding is that there was no official condemnation coming out from this meeting.
So I think we have one more question coming in from another viewer. We're going to be doing a few of these. Dave in North Dakota asks, what are, and this is something that I think a lot of Americans are curious about, what are Israel's expectations for U.S. involvement? Does Israel desire direct U.S. involvement? Have the Israelis made it clear?
Well, this government, the government of Prime Minister Netanyahu, yes, absolutely. And you don't have to take my words for it. You just have to go back and listen to what Prime Minister Netanyahu has said in the past, that he's been trying to get the United States involved and in other words, get the U.S. to attack Iran on behalf of the Israelis. It will make the job much easier for the Israelis. If there are casualties, it will be, unfortunately, American casualties, and the Israelis can sit on the side and enjoy the benefits of the U.S. response, which I think is very dangerous. It goes against what President Trump has repeatedly campaigned for, and this is what I believe his base of support is demanding.
We are hearing that Fox News has been reporting that Iran is saying that the U.S. shall be held fully accountable for the series of strikes that Jerusalem levied against Tehran. What could that look like? You've already been alluding